Okay, it's a great pleasure to introduce Dr. Wansoo Im. Dr. Im got his PhD in urban planning from Rutgers, has been very active in community, both as a technology developer and also as a researcher in community-led mapping programs, and is now professor of family and community health at Meharry Medical College, and we're very happy to have the chance to have you talk to us about this community participatory mapping. So thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm really glad to be here. I have 15 minutes, and then I have 63 slides, so I will just try to do really quick. Okay. Yeah, I'm an associate professor at the family medicine, but my background is actually a planner. So I went to Chapel Hill, and then I got my PhD at Rutgers, but I do technology, transportation, land use, and environmental planning with public health. So what I do at Rutgers, I'm not Rutgers, Meharry. God, it still takes time to adjust. Okay, this is like the map of the years of potential life, like loss. So depends on where you live. Life expectancy differs almost 20 years. So what we do is we try to really see how to remove this health disparity, and then the reason that I got recruited by them is because of social determinant of health. It's not just you have health insurance and you have doctors. It's because of land use, transportation, healthcare access, even gentrifications, right? So everything affects the person's the health. So what I do is that this is my public health exposure data set. So we collect all the stressors and personal attributes, but also community data, such as natural, built, social, and policy data, and then try to explain the difference of the health outcome. So we have about the 30,000 variables now that explain the health outcome, and then we've been doing a lot of research. And what I do is the technology part, big data part, and data science part with GIS. I've been actually teaching GIS since 1990. I look young. I don't know. I was kidding. But anyway. So I'm a director of the National Community Mapping Institute. Basically, we use GIS and community participatory mapping to do the data visualization, data dissemination, and citizen science. So community mapping is defined, as I defined it actually, using mapping technology to identify, understanding, analyze, resolve, disseminate community issue with the explicit intentions of education, engagement, and empowerment. So basically, I put 6E plus 1, which is efficiency, effectiveness, and equity, education, engagement, empowerment, and enjoyment. So this is our site. We do actually map of the day. We try to publish one map per day, whether it's interactive or static map. So if anybody is interested in mapping your own data, you can send to us. We can do it for free, whether it's interactive or static map. So this is the example of unemployment data, and we have access to the Nashville open data that is from the website. This is the assault heat map. It's also interactive. And somebody mentioned about the property violation. So we look at the map of the property violation, and then we overlay with the percent of poverty and percent of the African American population too. This is all interactive. So citizens can just use a computer without any special software. They can just zoom in, zoom out. They can find their property. Have you heard somebody map the New York restroom? No? That's me, actually. In 2005, I was traveling, and then I couldn't find the bathroom, that doesn't have line. So in 2005, I created nyrestroom.com. That was actually one of the first cloud sourcing that at the time we used the word hacking Google Map. And so this is the app, and I still have a lot of email from the tourists that how thankful they are. And I was known as a bathroom guy, in the New Yorker. But what I was interested in is in the, how to use the technology, and especially GIS technology, make it available for the general public so they can be educated, and then they can participate and they can be empowered. So I actually I created my new technology startup company in 1992. So that's what we do, citizen science with GIS. So I try to make it quick, easy, and custom and in sync. So this is like the diagram, but you don't need to understand whole, but it basically can bring any kind of government and open data by just clicking, like even Nashville or like New York and the state data. And then we use a cloud, and you can use a Google or any kind of map. So everything is developed on the assumption that you don't need to know anything about technology. And so within 15 minutes, I can show you actually a quick demo. You can create an app and web and the mobile web that collect data and then overlay lots of different data sets. So this is a project that I did in 2008 at Rutgers. So we did the map of the Rutgers RU safe, like Rutgers safety. So we actually did the campus safety during the evening hours, whether it's dark, whether it's dangerous. So people's perception of the data by using this app, right? And app was developed by me. Anyway, so this is me, and then we collect all the school data within actually 2 hours because it's crowdsourcing, right? We have like this people, and then they just do the one block, and then they map the data. Information is stored in the cloud, so which means anybody who has access can download or can create another app or another data visualization. So this is like all standard. So based on that, you can even map the light index. The smartphone become like what? Almost broadcasting system. You can collect data, you can disseminate, and you can share information. So you can look at this light index, and you can map with the people how they think whether it's dangerous or not dangerous. And then another thing is, wow, there should be street light. Why it is dark, right? You can see the status of the street light, whether it's broken, whether it's covered by a tree or something like that. So I'm going to explain later the reason that the citizen science and this community mapping is important. It can actually provide lots of data that is not available, right, in publicly available data or so-called big data, right? It's a great supplemental data. In addition, that it actually promotes the civic activism. So mapping gas station, I don't know how many people know about the Hurricane Sandy in New Jersey, right? It passed right over my house, right? So this is not my house, but it happened like this, right? So we had a lot of issues of gas stations that closed and open and all those. So we create this app, right? That was actually using high school students. So gas station is there, but not many people know whether it's open, how long is the line when they open, and all those. So we use this crowdsourcing data, and then it was like available for almost a month, and then it was used by the FEMA. Can you see the Mapler.com and those? And even Google was using our data. Right? Google was using our data, and then even Department of Energy, their emergency call center, was using our data that was created by high school students. Right? So basically what I'm going to show you is that there is a lot of data need and analysis need, right? That can be, community mapping can be used. And also I'm going to show you some other things too, but during this process, the participant can be educated and engaged and empowered because they can actually make changes by looking at the data. Another thing that I do is like this kind of I use a big data and then data science, and also I use the social media data. So when there's an Ebola happening, I look at all the tweet data, which is 500 million cases a day, and then we map the flu and then the Ebola case, try to show the kind of relations on the actual worldwide. And this is one example of the map, noise complaint map. Nashville is using the system called the Socrata, and New York is using San Francisco and Chicago too. So they use the so-called the SODA. It's kind of like standard approach how to access data. So using the tool that I created, you can actually bring, this is like a real-time noise complaint that is happening in New York. And you can overlay with your data, right? And then you can overlay with other data too. So I was actually, this is like 1.5-year-old project that when I come to Meharry, this is the first project that I did with the 4th grade students. So if 4th grader can do, you can do, right? Oh, okay. Okay. So what we did was the Eakins and then J Summer School, we mapped the safe route to school. So I think it might be easier if I actually show you the demo. This is the app, right? This is what the elementary the students did with their parents. So they map like the sidewalk condition, right? All those. And then it can be overlaid with the sidewalk data. Can you see government data? No. You have to say something. Okay, hey, let me just do the display. Oh, gosh, thank you. Can you see now? Okay, so let me just unclick. Okay, so this is a map. Right? So, and then it's real time, and then this is the data that what students enter the data, right? They with their parents. And then you can actually click this. You can see the sidewalk, right? And you can actually see even percent population, age, children age. So the data can be overlaid in a lot of different ways, and then citizens can look at it. But the things that I like about this, 4th grader and 5th grader work with parents, right? So it's easy to really engage, right? Community itself. And then I want to show how easy to enter the data actually. So I have my smartphone, right? And then I use the tool. There is a Mapler 2, K2, right? And then I click, and you have the safe route to Nashville, right? So it's real time, and then I click add. Let's say I'm in the field, change the location. So it has GPS, right? And you can move, confirm. I want to take photo, say hi to me. Hi, no, here, like raise your hands or something like that. Hi. Okay, I took the photo, right? Use photo. Location, right? I will just say what? Test, right? Category, sidewalk, conditions, and you can put all those, right? Wide and something like that, and save. Information is updated right away. Do you see what I see? Do you see what I see? Right? Basically, what I'm trying to do is make the technology so simple, right? And citizens can use, right? To understand data, collect data, and engage, and then they can make changes, right? And so in here, so you may wonder how I developed this kind of site. Let me show you. Like I go to login. I want to say, safe route to school, Nashville. Safe route to school, Nashville, like this. Do you see this menu? Right? So if I click this variable and set variable, you basically choose a variable that you want. So instead of sidewalk and crosswalk, you can say bacon house, right? Or tree type. Are you following me? Are you scared? I'm not going to bite you, don't worry. Okay. So you do this, and you can create your own like the variable, and then you can actually do the general and map setting, and then you can choose what kind of symbol you like to do, or you can upload your own symbol, right? Or you can go to, hey, I want to do, let's say, not in Nashville, I want to do in DC. So you just set the map like this and change the title. So a lot of times that our Mapler, the tool that I developed, has been used in like disaster management because we can develop within 10 minutes and deploy, right? And then it's done. It can be done. Well, it can be done by the 4th year like students. You can do it too, right? So let me just go back to the PowerPoint. You know what? Let me just show you one more thing. In here, you can actually do a lot of different analysis too. Create density map. Real time, right? So anybody create the data, they can actually, overlay with that different data set, and then they can look at the data the way they want. Now, I want to see how much time that I left. Oh, it starts with 0 again. Good. No, I'm just, how much, do I have 5 minutes? Yeah, 5 minutes. Good, thank you. So safe route to school, so I just show you, I can just pass. And then another project that I did was with the Haynes, and then like the, another middle school in northern, like the Nashville. We are funded by the National Library of Medicine. So we mapped the mosquito breeding site to avoid the Zika, right? So now you can see like how easy it can be done, right? This is done by the middle school students to map all the mosquito breeding site. And it can be overlaid with land use, or populations, or any kind of data. And this is how students, right, were participating, right? Everybody has smartphone, right? And students said, what, really fun, could stop to make sure that the breeding of mosquito and Zika virus doesn't spread. It helped me believe what I could do in the future to prevent that. Education, engagement, empowerment, and enjoyment, right? Look at this. What did you think about the event? We did a survey. A lot of students, a lot of fun, right? But this is the interesting thing. How much did you know about Zika virus before today's event? This is very interesting. They had so many class, didactic session, lecture, and all those. They said, don't know, knew a little. And after today's mapping event, how much did you learn about Zika virus? What? Look at the graph. Learned a lot, learned a little, right? So I see this community mapping as an engagement, right? And then learning. Do you know how to actually avoid the gentrification? I'm going to say this one last, but people show they need to know about their community and they need to have an affection, right? Data is important, graph is important, but they need to really have something in their heart. I want to really save my community, right? I really love my community, right? And another event that I do is community mapping public health hackathon. I did with Robin. Robin, where are you? Oh, there, yeah. And so what we do is we use the Nashville public data, and then with lots of different people, right? This is our president. And then, with a programmer and some Vanderbilt people and all those. And then we come up with issues of the community and then try to resolve. So we provide the data, and we provide the tool and training, and then it's the all day. We come up with idea and then resolve. And we try to have this this summer too. So I hope that if people are interested, we can do things together. And so this is the data of the Nashville, and then we actually have most of Nashville data in different format like this. Nashville is providing the data in certain format, but we try to actually download data and then make it more easy to clickable. And so this is a group of people, and they put into the whiteboard, and then they create an app like this, the way that I show you, right? Literally, it's not really technology anymore. It's about your idea and your time and your passion, right? And this is one project, since it's a gentrification, I just create some map. I just found the project that I did, which is the Park and Garden of New Brunswick. And this is the, actual Park and Garden, and this is the New Brunswick property. We sometimes complain there is no data, right? But if you have 10 people, you can collect the data easily, and you can overlay with lots of different data sets. And this is another project that I did in New Jersey to map all the stormwater, right, outlet. So they can do for their the neighborhood planning. And this is another project that I did for the community visioning in Fort Black, right, about the public transit. So we can collect the data. People can just add information about what they think about the project. This is one interesting project that I did with Georgia Tech. It's basically students' perception. So we did a survey, right? Here is a social place, here is a starting place, and all those. So by mapping the data, you can actually, do this kind of quick, simple, the heat map and density map. You can see where the concentration, right? And where the potential area, and you can overlay too. I have actually about 200 websites. And one of the websites is historyworks.org. This is what I like most. Is the people in the community map the historical asset of their community. It shows how valuable it is, right? Without data, without record, you cannot really say that we are losing, right? You cannot really show it to people. This is one project that I did in Trenton with the history of the Spring Street in Trenton. So we have 1930 and 1940, right, of the information of the owners of the property and get all the data, right? So this is one interesting project. And I do lots of environmental projects with environmental health. So this is one project that I did in Texas. So it's the same application. People just report it about pollutions. Right? Here's the garbage, here's the abandoned tires and all those. The system that I have is if you have abandoned tire and report it, that report go to the corresponding agency's email. And then it send email until they resolve. I mean, city may not like it, right? But it's a great, like the empowerment tool. And then this can be developed as an app like this, independent app. So you can just use our Mapler app, download and use it, but we can also develop like gentrification app in in Nashville, something like that. So what I'm interested in is I'm done, right? Basically social innovation by using technology, citizen science, and community mapping. Thank you.
Would you like to take a question or two?
I mean, if I have time.
One or two questions, please.
Hi. You can edit it. It's actually pretty sophisticated. The admin of your site, for example, if you become admin, you can give different permissions. So some students only can edit the data, some students who can delete and add the data or update data. So it's actually, has different level of permission that you can give. Yeah. You can edit it, you can download, you can upload it, you can upload Excel file and all those.
Is it just points that you're adding? Like if I say I want to map pieces of sidewalk that are good.
We are adding line, but right now you can add KML or any kind of GIS data format. So there is several different ways that you can handle. Yeah.
Is there a way to restrict access to the map?
Yes, so many different ways. Yeah. So it basically when we create the site admin become the owner of the site, right? So he set the policy. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Well, all right. We are well on our way for the day. Just 1 minute. We'll take a break. We'll do the breakout sessions. And I just want to thank both of our speakers and say that.
All right. So we took a little bit of a different tack this afternoon than we did this morning, which I think is a good thing. One of the first things that we talked about, one of the primary things that we talked about, was how infrastructure and walkability and sidewalks tie into the issue of transportation and transit, and how they tie into gentrification, how, some neighborhoods that maybe have been looking for amenities for, 15, 20, 30 years are now suddenly getting sidewalk improvements as kind of the makeup of the neighborhood changes, and how that it ties into people's ability to access transit options, and also to have kind of a sense of neighborhood, and whether those resources are being given, as people are displaced, whether those neighborhoods are also getting sidewalk resources. We also talked a little bit about the specific challenges of transportation for elderly people as they're displaced. If they're moving outside of the county, for example, to find affordable housing, they're losing their connection to maybe a hospital that's been in their neighborhood, to medical professionals, as well as to their social network. And we had a good talk on how to match funding for affordable housing and for transportation, so to ensure that those resources are being allocated in coordination with each other, that we're not throwing, money to affordable housing on the county line and money to transit in the core of the city. If you move to an affordable house and you can't access your job, it's not really affordable anymore. As far as data needs, we talked about data on really having open data on who's participating in decisions on transit and housing, as well as the banking behind it. How do you ensure that that data is available to the public so that you know who's making those decisions, and so that the people who it affects are involved in that decision making? And then ensuring that data collected from public input doesn't just go into a box, that it actually shapes public policy, that it's, transformed into something that actually changes the conversation on transit. And then we also talked about making sure that the data that goes into transportation and transit decisions is available to the public and to groups that want to use it, either for research, for outreach, just for community conversation, that it's available, accessible, in a format that people can, really get to the root of it, that they're not having to dig through, thousands of pages or make public records requests for information that should be, available to them because it was used to make a decision that's going to affect them. I think that's about, I think that's about it.
Thank you. Okay, next we have forecasting gentrification. That's going to be so I will turn it over to Janie Camp. Here you go.
Thanks. So I will say that our topic on forecasting gentrification didn't necessarily follow the rubric that we had set for the questions, so we kind of went a bit off topic on that. So the first thing we discussed was, can we actually forecast where we anticipate gentrification happening in the future and how? And the suggestion was to identify areas at risk using indicators such as the increased number of rehabs taking place, because sometimes that is a precursor activity to demolition and buyouts for gentrification and displacement. Also looking at continuity with areas that are currently being gentrified, because it seems to be sequential. And then not just considering temporal forecasting, but also spatial forecasting was a good point made. And additionally, looking at cultural clustering and mixed use or multi-unit housing and as areas at risk, but taking into consideration that some of these immigrant populations may be trying to stay together, and how do we help that or identify areas that's being torn down. So we also discussed, if we can identify areas that are at risk of gentrifying, then what can we do to mitigate or try to stop that? And obviously, maintaining affordable housing was one of the things that was brought, but a key conversation piece was education outreach for community members on their rights and how to organize, and presenting data and information in a way that makes sense to them, but working through community leaders so that the information is coming from trusted members of the community, not just government officials. We also talked about a lot of things, but sorry, I have a lot of notes. The role of data. So if we can predict, how do we communicate it? So simple information may be best, considering how that information is presented, who the audience is, and does it make sense to share it as a story versus maps and data and things like that. And then also considering being creative and helping those communities organize and produce art and, be colorful, signage, things like that. And also, to what extent can we educate them that they can actually work with developers to find, ways of developing that meet multiple demands or maintain some affordable housing while allowing the developers to still get their profits in through development. And some of the discussions were also around the VISOR activities that we might pursue, such as working to take the data that's available and frame it in a way that it does become an educational resource for communities that are at risk of gentrifying. And then working through the council members, because with 35 council members, you know, all of them need to know what information to take back to their communities to help protect their constituent base. Being mindful of history and race and demographics and culture, and then being mindful of terms that are used in that. So that's, in a very short period, a lot of what we discussed. Thank you.
Okay, next, Aaron Palmer will be back to share some of the comments from this afternoon's short-term rentals and renters' rights.
So this morning, I shared mostly about the rental market. This afternoon, we focused more on renters' rights, which we didn't talk much about this morning. So in the state of Tennessee, if your rent is not paid on the 6th day, a landlord can start the eviction process without giving notice. Now, the landlord can give an option to quote-unquote pay and stay. So if you're able to get your rent caught back up, you can continue to live in that unit. So we talked about maybe some organizing solutions to this. So one thing that we talked about from an organizing perspective is, is there a way in which we can collect leases, obviously take the non-identifying information out of them, and kind of study the language being utilized in leases that might lend itself to more predatory / disadvantages being taken from the renters. The other thing that we talked about was, is there a way in which we can start partnering with court systems? So if a landlord or property management group is starting to file an eviction, maybe that first point of contact at the court system asks, will you accept, can they pay and stay? If they got their rent caught up, will you allow them to stay in your unit? If the answer is yes, how can we then refer the landlord / renter or family into a community resource intervention that can get their rent caught up? So that might go into prevention funds, which I know families experiencing homelessness and individuals in these communities can be eligible for. But for a lot of those grants, they're only eligible to get prevention funds if they're already served an eviction notice. So how can we potentially work better with our court systems on a referral-based system? And some of the other policies that we talked about were maybe trying to push through rent control in Nashville and non-discriminatory payment systems. So landlords or property managers can't turn down a family that has, or an individual that has, a voucher. So, thank you.
Thank you. So our last group will be the Data and Gentrification group from Jonathan Gillian again.
So we started with, again, looking at what some of the specific problems that our participants, communities and constituencies face with regard to gentrification, some of which include what this does in the school systems, where schools don't know who their population's going to be, don't know how to prepare for who my student's going to be come August when school opens, and how many of them are going to be sticking around through the whole school year, creates real problems. Looking at homelessness in Nashville and the fact that statistics collected on homelessness don't always reflect the realities. There's undercounting of certain groups. There's data that's really important, like households that are doubling up in one unit are not collected and reported. So data that's just not there, and thinking about how to deal with the data that's not there. And this reflects back on looking potentially at some of the data analysis methods that Ken Stife talked about this morning to try to model and fill in data that's not there by drawing on the data that is there. This led to discussion of different sources of data, different kinds of data, problems of harmonizing data from different sources. If you wanted to be studying Section 8 vouchers in Nashville, well, that's not data that's collected by the metro government, so that's not something that's metro government has. It's something that MDHA has some of, but also some Section 8 properties run through MDHA, some's run through HUD, so you have different organizations actually having different pieces of your data set and may not be collecting that consistently, may not be making it consistently available. As you start to also look at data, especially data that contains more detailed demographic information and more detailed geographic information, then potential identifiability of data. You can strip people's names and addresses and everything that you think of as personally identifiable information off of something, but if you know that this data was collected in a very small geographic area, there may be only 1 or 2 households that satisfy all the different criteria you've got, and somebody with a computer can go back and re-identify the person. So there's a real tension between, if we're trying to look at a very detailed neighborhood level where change is happening very rapidly in certain places and not other places very nearby, you want this very fine-grained data, but this creates privacy challenges. So there aren't going to be easy answers to this, but it's going to be an important thing to struggle with. What do you do similarly when you're dealing with small data, again, about very limited things? We discussed the role of the Envision Casey process and the concern by lots of residents in Casey homes that they're going to be essentially passively evicted, not thrown out with a court proceeding because they violated something, but they're moved out and they're not allowed to move back in when the new unit is there. And there's anecdotal data about this, but there's not systematic data being collected. What can we do with anecdotal data? What can we do with people's stories? And Aaron spoke at lunch very powerfully about the role of the oral histories and the role of stories. And if any of you think about how much more powerful the book Evicted is because of these case studies than if it was just a big compendium of statistics on eviction, there's a very important role for qualitative data, people's stories, oral histories, and using this and thinking about mixed methods, combining qualitative and quantitative data to understand what's happening and make this real to the public and to policymakers. And then thinking about how to use the data not with us trying to tell other people's stories, but with really empowering people to tell their stories and to back those stories up with data and to be able to speak to power, to say, our community's being treated badly, our community's not being served, our community demands to be treated right. And how can we create that kind of empowerment, but at the same time not be naive that there are a lot of big forces going on here, and we don't just want to go and tell some unrealistically optimistic story to people who were asking for data. So how do we kind of create a realistic sense of how to empower communities at the same time being cognizant of the really big historical forces and economic forces people are facing? And there aren't easy answers, but these are some of the things. And I think thinking about listening to people's stories, following methods where we identify what data we're collecting, what we're going to try to do with it in terms of what people are saying, what their stories are, what their needs are, what their community concerns are. Working with people to take the right kinds of data. Some of it's going to be their stories, some of it's going to be measurements, combining it, and working with communities, especially vulnerable communities, to try to make the data accessible in ways that people can work with it and be empowering. And one final aspect of this, we were also very powerfully moved by the sense of power that can come in with where the law won't step in and help things. The naming and shaming aspect, again, that Aaron talked about these are evictors, but are very concerned about the potential for backlash, for unintended consequences, and wanting to make sure that we don't step in as researchers and do things with all the good intentions that are going to redound harmfully on people. And this, again, becomes part of expressing some humility, and we're working in service of communities. We're not trying to stand in place of communities. So that's really where we were.
Thank you very much. It's a great segue. Jim Fraser is going to come up and talk about next steps and discussion of workshop outcomes.
Thank you for staying this long, too. It's really great to see everyone. Everyone who was involved in organizing this, could you stand up and just say your name to the crowd? Because there was a lot of work put into, like Janie, you, and Doug, and Jonathan, and Cammie, and come here. Come here. And really, Alexis Butler put this all together for us. Thank you. We still have 2 more speakers, but I know that they are excited. I believe Erik Cole and Havard are both going to give us a few minutes. So I'm only going to take 5 minutes to let you know some things. Next steps for, I don't know if I call it VISOR, but from those of us that helped organize this and to honor your time, we are going to provide, the goal is to, one output would be a white paper that would document what we've been talking about in the breakout groups as well as what the speakers have brought to us, and we will send an email out soon that will have timelines for this stuff. So we're not saying we're going to send you a white paper tomorrow. But we also are going to send raw notes from the tables, from the breakout sessions in separate files. So some people said they would like access to those. Yes? And also, I've downloaded some of the materials from all the speakers I've downloaded, and I will make sure that we send some of their materials and what they've written out to you all as well, in addition to that, because I found it in each case fascinating. Yeah, so to close, yes, no? Okay. Yep.
I think what Jim and I had in mind, instead of a lengthy discussion, if you could send us any final thoughts, particular recommendations that you did get a chance to say in your groups or whatever, please do send that to any of us, and we'll incorporate that into what we produce.
Yes, we really want that. I'm not going to take long. I've been working on, well, I haven't really been working on the book project, but I've been thinking about it a lot and writing some and then going back and daydreaming and spacing out and all. But what came out of today, and I'm so glad it did, is that I really do sense that, like, again, we each occupy different spaces, and those spaces have constraints as well as kind of opportunities for us to act in certain ways, to take certain lines of action, think and vocalize in certain ways. And from what I heard from the groups I was in, and I think some of the speakers as well, is that if we think about precarity and precarious living meaning not being able to, not being able to predict in any way really suitable when something might challenge, like someone's right or someone's dwelling, where someone's occupying and inhabiting the city. Precarity in the sense that, as one person speaks, and I think this is rather eloquently, this woman, Judith Butler, says, maybe precarity, and if we recognize that we're all precarious and human, that in the end, we are all precarious, that we can think about how important it is for people to have a place to live. And we can contribute to that by using data analysis in unique ways, and a lot of that we heard today, but we have to put that thought in front that, like, we do care. And so this is a real issue. 30,000 units short right now of affordable housing, and when the transit goes through, pretty much, we'll have additional challenges we have to face and opportunities. So with that, I hope that we bring all the data analysis kind of back to the idea of, like, why we're doing it here, that we care about the people that we live around. Thank you very much, and I'd like to introduce Ann Havard and Erik Cole, who I've had the pleasure of working with at times in the mayor's office, and very pleased that you all are here, and you two are going to close it out.
I'm Ann Havard. I'm our Deputy Chief Resilience Officer in the Mayor's Office. This is Erik Cole, our Chief Resilience Officer. I'll let Erik go ahead.
Cool. So yeah, Jim set us up. I've got about 3 hours of material, so y'all are ready for, no. I was able to join you the whole day, and I apologize for that. The couple things I took away, and then we'll just do a really fast dive on work that is happening in the city, but also, I mean, this is a call to action for all of us, right? The couple things I took away from today are the importance of participation and the importance of voices in the participation that are the people that these issues affect and impact, and empowerment. That, to get the enthusiasm, the excitement, the energy, and the ideas to solve these kinds of problems, we have to be inclusive, and we have to build systems and organizations that can make that happen. We look at it from where we sit in the mayor's office. We have to put a lot of things, we spend a lot of time with data, and we have to put a lot of things into the analysis of what is a return on investment for the city. I think, in short, what you're talking about, what we're talking about today, is a new lens and a new frame on what return on investment means, and what are we measuring in terms of those returns and what our investments are. That framework and that data is extraordinarily important. It's extraordinarily important that we're able to talk in the halls of power about that information and that return on investment, but also have the voices of folks that are impacted heard there as well. I also have learned in our work in disasters, one of the little secrets is never let a good disaster go to waste. So when you have horrible emergent moments, that's your opportunity for change and for growth. And so I would submit, as we talk today, there's a fair amount of that opportunity in our space right now. But really fast, what is this concept of resilience? And what are we doing? And we're really working with all of you. I've had a great partnership with Vanderbilt throughout our process. But basically, urban resilience is a city's ability to bounce back from shocks and stresses. So that could be an immediate 2010 massive flood, as we saw here in Nashville. It could also be a long-term, slow-burning issue, such as gentrification and displacement. We're fortunate in Nashville to be part of this 100 Resilient Cities network. We have a Chief Resilience Officer, a Deputy Chief Resilience Officer positioned in the Mayor's office. And what we're supposed to deliver with you and for you is a resilient strategy by the end of 2018, early 2019. We've had some political ups and downs here these last few months, so some of our timeline has changed just because our mayors have changed. We have a commitment, though, and I think you see a commitment from this mayor in all of these different topic areas you've discussed today. You heard from Adrienne this morning, Adrienne Harris and Morgan Mansa from our housing office, who are doing amazingly incredible things. There's all kinds of work happening across the mayor's office in this space. We're not the only player, obviously. You are the players, the community are the players, our critical community organizations are the players. So what our strategy will be at the end of this process is an implementation playbook for how do we achieve multiple goals or co-benefits in the projects that we look at in Metro. So when we look at how we are prepared for future shocks and changes, are we looking at that in an equitable fashion? Are we looking at that in a prioritized fashion that meets kind of environmental, community, and equity standards? I heard somebody talking about how we choose capital project prioritization earlier today. We talked a lot at our table about data visibility and transparency. And some of the data we need on gentrification and displacement, we aren't even capturing because the forms weren't set up to capture that. Well, these are all resilience challenges. Some of them real sexy and interesting. Other ones like, yeah, really? The city doesn't do that yet? Well, no, we're trying. And so those of us inside that are champions of working for that need your support as well. So in our definition of resilience, it's not just environmental, it's not just preparing for shocks and stresses of rising sea levels or the increasing number of storms and tornadoes that we're seeing, it's also these very human changes. The 100 people a day are not stopping. That in-migration to Nashville is going to continue to come. And a lot of that reason is because of a lot of our great attributes, but it has significant consequences that we all have to face together. And the resilience strategy is a way to do that. Now, let me just really fast talk about the 5 areas that we're journeying forward with all of you in that, and then I want to say a couple things, and then I'll let Ann go from there. But basically, in our strategy and the pieces that we heard, we had about 5,000 touches in the community over the last year. I would encourage you, if you're really interested, you can see the resilience strategies that Atlanta and Boston both put out within the last year. But through our community engagement and community touches, we kind of came down in 5 areas of how resilience is important in Nashville. 1, fostering personal and community health and well-being. 2, building and sustaining community wealth. Somebody said financial empowerment center earlier, so thank you. 3, harnessing growth to promote equitable economic development. 4, preparing and adapting our physical assets for the future. That's both hard assets as well as infrastructure. Strengthening more inclusive and effective city government systems. That kind of goes back to the open data and the point I mentioned earlier. For Nashville, our biggest opportunity for increasing and harnessing these challenges lies in how we deal with our prosperity going forward. I'm an adamant and ardent supporter of the transit plan that we're voting on May 1st as the biggest resilience strategy this city has ever taken on. Happy to argue the pros and cons of that and why I don't think it will lead to negative outcomes for the city and how it will advance all of the topics we talked about today. That's obviously not why you asked me to be up here, but as CRO and as we have interacted with cities around the world, a multifaceted, multimodal, multi-year, multi-revenue streamed transportation policy that also takes into effect and account land use and equity and anti-poverty strategies is a pretty co-beneficial project going forward. So again, y'all didn't ask me to come up and talk about transit, so I'm not going to do that. We will note, however, the impacts of what cost burden has on our low-income residents, and you talked about that a lot today. I would just submit that we also think about cost burden beyond just 33% of your income going to housing, but also 30 and 33% of your income going to transportation costs, which is the average among most southern city residents who are in poverty. It costs $12,000 a year for one of us to operate one vehicle and car. Again, concentrating our density going forward, and that strategy, I feel, really delivers on that promise. But as I think Adrian mentioned earlier, and as you all have seen, there is a lot of work happening. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done. The great outcomes for me of today was to see the promise in identifying the data that we have, the data that we don't have, and then also remembering and keeping in mind that we got to change hearts and minds. We got to change opinions. People have to, especially people that make transactional decisions in this city, need to take an issue like gentrification and displacement into account. And the more we do this together around tables and build that, the more I think we can start to turn some of that curve. So, Ann, unless I hope I didn't take it all away, we're used to doing this like Mutt and Jeff, but...
Yeah, so as Adrian mentioned earlier, obviously, this is the beginning of a conversation, and gentrification and displacement are heavy words. And they're loaded with history and weight of current and past experiences of so many of our residents. But to do something about it, we do have to get beyond the gentrification mad libs, as Dr. Stife was talking about earlier, and actually use data for action to prevent displacement, to stabilize our neighborhoods, and to grow our community equitably and connect people to economic mobility. So how can we use data not just to predict risk and get out in front of preventing displacement, but also connecting people to the right economic mobility interventions? How can we mobilize our neighborhoods to build power? Hopefully the conversations from today were fruitful and informative for you all, and hopefully we can walk away from here with a lot of great ideas about how we can better collaborate across all of our many different organizations with all of the data that we have, and build a stronger coalition to make sure that we are actually addressing these really serious problems that we've been talking about today. We have a lot of great work underway, as Erik was talking about, at the city with the resilience strategy. I know Robin Mace is here, our chief data officer, who runs our open data program. The open data portal is awesome. You should go check it out. And there's a lot of great work here at Vanderbilt as well, at VISOR, at Vector, all the acronyms of government and academia, and across our community with a lot of the organizing that is underway. But we do have to all work together. So thank you all so much for being here. This hopefully was an awesome start to a great conversation. We look forward to a white paper and so much more. So thank you all.
Can we say, have a good day?